You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective,
and Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'm Eric Carter Lundeen, and today we dive deep into a case that has haunted a family and a community for over 2 decades. The tragic and untimely death of Ruben Pacheco. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @murderinmyfam or on Facebook at facebook.com/TMIMF podcast. If you'd like to support The Murder in My Family and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts for only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. You'll unlock a variety of listener benefits and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated, and thank you to all of our supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note, please support any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family the way that those sponsors support this show. It's with our sponsor support that the show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now, on to our show. Today's episode is a poignant reminder of how difficult it can be for families to navigate the aftermath of a violent loss, especially when answers are scarce and official investigations have gone cold. Ruben Pacheco was a bright young man with a promising future ahead of him. His life was abruptly and violently taken from him in 1997, and for over 25 years, his family has been tirelessly seeking the truth about what happened on that fateful night. Joining me today are his siblings, his sister Tina Whitley and his brothers Chris and John Pacheco. Together, they have faced unimaginable grief and frustration, and yet they remain steadfast in their pursuit of justice for Ruben. I want to take a moment to set the scene for you. Imagine a small, tight-knit community in New Mexico where everyone knows each other and news travels fast. Las Vegas, New Mexico may not have the glitz and glamour of its namesake in Nevada, but it is a town with its own charm and sense of community. It's the kind of place where you'd expect people to rally together, especially in the face of tragedy, like Ruben's. But instead of support and solidarity, the Pacheco family encountered a series of challenges that have made their quest for justice all the more difficult. From inconsistent witness statements to an investigation that many feel was mishandled. Their journey has been fraught with obstacles, and yet, despite all of this, they haven't given up hope. In today's episode, we will not only hear from Tina, Chris, and John about their memories of Ruben, the brother that they knew and loved, but also about the peculiar twists and turns in the investigation into his death. We will explore the night that Ruben went missing, the baffling circumstances surrounding his discovery, and many unanswered questions that still linger. I want to emphasize the importance of this conversation. It's not just about looking back at the cold case. It is about understanding the real, human impact of unsolved crime. It's about recognizing the deep, lasting pain that families like the Pachecos have to endure. And it's about calling attention to the need for action.
for reopening cases, re-examining evidence, and ultimately, hopefully, for justice to be served. Before we dive into this interview, I'd like to provide a bit more context about Ruben himself. He was known for being a kind and gentle soul. He had a great sense of humor and was always there to lend helping hands to friends and family. His sudden absence left a void that has never been filled. To his siblings and to those who knew him best, Ruben was not just a victim. He was a brother, a cherished friend, and a person with dreams and aspirations that were tragically cut short. As we go through the episode, I want you to keep Ruben in your thoughts. Remember that behind every story of an unsolved murder is a real person whose life was stolen, and a family whose pain is renewed every day that goes on without answers. The Pacheco's strength and dedication to Ruben's memory are a testament to the enduring power of love and family. In this interview, you'll hear Tina, Chris, and John share intimate memories of their brother, from childhood anecdotes to the last moments that they spent together. They'll discuss the many inconsistencies and frustrations that they've encountered with law enforcement and the legal system. They'll also talk about the advocacy efforts that they've undertaken, petitions, calls for reinvestigation, and the support that they've sought from the community and beyond. Our aim today is not only to shine light on Ruben's case, but to amplify the voices of his family, to bring to light the aspects of the investigation that demand further scrutiny, and to call on those who might hold any piece of the puzzle to come forward. We believe that after all these years, Ruben's case deserves another look with fresh eyes and renewed vigor. As we begin this episode, I want to thank the Pacheco family for their courage and openness. Sharing their story was not easy, but it was incredibly important, and it's my hope that through this platform we can shed new light on Ruben's case and move one step closer to finding answers that have eluded them for too long. Thank you for joining us today. Please stay tuned as we unravel the heartbreaking story of Ruben Pacheco, and please stand with his family as they fight for justice.
Welcome to the Murder in My Family. I'm Eric Carter-Londine, and today I am joined by three siblings, and I'm going to ask you all three to please introduce yourselves.
My name is Tina Whitley.
My name is Chris Pacheco. And I'm John Pacheco.
And the three of you are obviously siblings, and you're here today to talk about the murder in your family. And we're here to talk about your brother, Ruben. So as we get into this, I'd like to just all of you take turns telling me a little bit about Ruben.
So I guess the things that I remember about Ruben the most, like I have very vivid memories of when we were young. We used to hang out a lot. The one memory that sticks out for me when I was pretty young was my dad was ill when we were little, and a lot of things just irritated him. So I ended up always being in the corner of his room. I was always in trouble because I was making too much noise. And Ruben used to come and quietly come over to me, and he'd bring Jack or something to play with. So he and I would play in the corner while I was finishing out my punishment in my dad's room. So those are the things that I remember about him when we're really little. The other memories that I have about him are he was just really nice. Like he was always joking around. He was always just a happy guy. And like the other memories I have about him in college, he would call me up and say, "Hey, let's go for a ride." And we would just go driving and listen to music and talk and just hang out. And those are the memories that stick out for me a lot. One year he came, I was in Oregon for a summer working and was driving back home. So he flew up to drive back home with me. He slept the whole way and didn't help me drive at all, but he was there and he came up. So those are the things that I remember the most about him. He was just a good guy.
All right. Well, I know that it was kind of like one of those weird times, right, where the family had just been together celebrating. Was it Christmas or Thanksgiving? Yeah. And can you remind me what the year was? Yeah. Okay. So 97, Christmas, the family had just been together. Everybody's starting to kind of go back home. And can you talk about that time frame, like with the family being all together, what was going on, and then if you want to go into kind of what happened after Christmas. I know when I read through the police report, there was talk about a lot of things that were kind of happening that night, just depending on, the people that the police were talking to and the different witnesses.
I'll go next. I used to live in Tucson, Arizona, and one of my best memories of Ruben was he's probably the one that went to visit me. So he came down and we went out to a dirt track racing, and he was supposed to meet up with some of his friends the next day, and I was working, and I came home and from work, and there's beer cans everywhere. It's like a hurricane hit, and he wasn't there, but that's what I remember the most, is that he was always up for doing things fun. So when I got home, I made a meal for us, and then he finally came back, and yeah, he didn't help me clean. He was just like, no, it was some of the beer cans were my friend, but I'm not going to help you clean. What I remember of him, I can tell you he was really spoiled, but a very good guy. Tina said that he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy, and a very good, I would say, loyal person, and without a mean bone in his body. I never saw him get mad. He's always pretty jovial. But yeah, there's some other things. The comparison between when he went to college and up until his death, he had glasses with no beard, no mustache, and that completely changed in the 7 years from when he started college, because he looked very studious the first year, and then that kind of completely changed. Those are my memories of Ruben.
Thanks, John. You want to go next, Chris?
I was quite a bit older than Ruben, so my experience with him is a little different. My memories of Ruben were changing his diapers and having him pee on me when I was doing that, those kind of things. We used to like to play video games a lot. So at the time, it was old PC computer games that we would share. And so we had those kind of things in common. I used to collect comic books when I was younger. And whenever I would purchase my weekly books, I would buy doubles of them so I could give a set to him. So he would have that to follow along. It was just something that we shared as a mutual hobby. There's one story that always sticks in my mind. I didn't spend a lot of time with Ruben as he got older, but he was in Las Cruces at New Mexico State. And I always laugh at this story because my brother said he was out drinking and came home one night and he lifted the middle couch on the cushion thinking it was the toilet seat and then peed on the couch. So I always crack up at that story. Like John and Tina said, you couldn't ask for a better brother. He was always so even-tempered, willing to do whatever. And it was just a lot of fun. He was a good kid. He had just started working at the Optic. And I think he was at a point where he was starting to figure stuff out as far as growing up. And it's just a shame that he never got the chance to follow that path.
I know that it was like one of those times where the family had just been together, celebrating Christmas. The family had just been together. Everybody's starting to go back home. And can you talk about that time frame, like with the family being all together, what was going on? And then if you want to go into kind of what happened after Christmas.
I can talk to a little bit. I know that night, me and my girlfriend at the time and my mom and Ruben and my cousins at my uncle and aunt's house, and we were playing poker. I think that was a Saturday night. I'm pretty sure that was a Saturday night. And I needed to leave to the airport the next morning. We left, me and girlfriend and my mom left, I'd say around 8:30, 9 o'clock, just so that I'd be ready to go the next morning back to Denver. And what I knew was that Ruben was going to stay there playing cards until maybe an hour later. My two cousins gave him a ride to the bar. And so the next morning, woke up, went to the airport. I think I had talked to my mom that morning and Ruben hadn't called, but it wasn't an alarming thing at that time because normally he would call and tell her where he's at. I got home and I think that afternoon, Sunday afternoon, I called to check to see if he had checked in with my mom and he hadn't. And I believe his friends started looking for him because nobody had heard from him. And then around midnight is when my brother called and told me that he had been found. Yeah.
When we look at the police report, there's a lot of different eyewitnesses that are saying different things. And so I can talk through some of that. I know that you all weren't there. Any of you were there to actually know what happened, but there's a lot of strange things in that police report. And so I remember reading something about an altercation or some kind of disturbance that happened in a bar that Ruben was in and that he had been asked to leave and that he had been removed from the bar at a certain point. And then the stories vary, but can you all share a little bit about what you understand happened in that bar? Or I know that none of you were there, but anything that you maybe have heard or read that you want to share about that?
I'll go ahead and take that one. So the bar that he was at initially is called Dick's Liquors. It's in downtown Las Vegas. And I guess he was asked to leave. He was supposedly bothering the other customers. Now, from what I understand, he was just trying to include himself into he wasn't doing anything noxious or anything. He was just trying to get involved in other people's conversations. And then after a while, I guess they asked him to leave. There was a person that was there that they had asked to leave before him. And from what I understand, when Ruben left the bar, that other person was the one who convinced him to go to La Casita, to the bar there. So now from some of the police report that I've read, some of the customers at Dick's were not exactly happy about how Ruben was being treated, but supposedly they asked him to leave and they escorted him out. I think the bartender supposedly was going to give him a ride home, but by the time he got outside, Ruben had already left with the other person.
Yeah, let me just add something in there is that I believe what happened, the person in the police report that his name is Sam Hillis, actually one of Ruben's friends, worked at Dick Liquors, and he's the one that was going to take him home. So I think that occurred there is correct.
And can I add to that? So
Yeah.
I talked to one of Ruben's friends earlier this week who was a bartender at Dick's, and it sounded like it wasn't like a huge ordeal as far as them just escorting him out. Because he said he was sitting right in front of me. He was having some drinks, and then things got busy, of course, because it's a bar. And he was like, the next thing I know, he's not there anymore. So I don't think I wouldn't call it an altercation. I think that he was probably just trying to insert himself into other people's conversations, and they asked him to leave.
Okay. Yep. And that makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because, I don't think you really get the sense of that in the police report, like the way that his friend described it. They made it seem a lot more rowdy, like people, like you said, Chris, somebody was upset about the way Ruben was being treated. It's just interesting to hear that other side of it where it was like so quiet almost that his friend didn't even really notice that it happened.
Or the bartender, his friend, didn't anyway.
Yeah.
I was just reading that earlier, and there were people who noticed that he left. I don't think it was a big deal.
So now there's talk about somebody that Ruben left the bar with. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the police spoke with this person and he gave a story about what happened that evening. Would any of you care to talk about that?
So when Ruben got escorted out of Dick's Liquor, the person that they had escorted prior to him said, "Hey, let's go over to La Casita." And he told the police that they couldn't get into La Casita, so they went over to the Allsup's parking lot. There was, I think, 3 other men there and drank some beers. And then I think this person then went back to La Casita without Ruben. And then somebody had noticed that he had some blood on one of his hands, I believe, at that time. Sorry, can you guys help me out here? I'm trying to...
No, I think that's pretty accurate as far as the progression. What's unusual was that they also interviewed other people who were supposedly outside also at the same time, and they claimed that there was nobody out in the parking lot supposedly drinking.
And to go along with that, the police officer that interviewed those people that came into the bar, the guy said that he had three beers or 2 beers. Unless you're chugging them, you would think that they were out there 30 minutes, maybe. And none of those people noticed anybody in the parking lot drinking. The distance between the entrance to the casita and the Allsups is like 50 yards. And the parking lot is right next to Allsups.
It's not like they could hide from people.
Right.
They were.
There's no place to hide. Yeah.
And the other too is it was really cold that night. Why would you opt to be drinking outside?
Yeah, it was in the teens. It was cold.
Yeah, it was cold. The other thing that I found unusual is the police officer that was looking at the videotapes mentions the fact that he was reviewing the tapes to see if he knew anybody. And he says that he talked to the people that he recognized. What about the people that he didn't recognize? Just tells me that I don't know if they get everybody. And there's no mention of that further on. But then what's unusual as well is that the bouncer says that Ruben was with a girl. That
Right.
He saw Ruben with a girl. So that doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah, once they get to the La Casita, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the stories, and it's me that nobody seemingly checked out the different options, because the guy who went with Ruben from Dick's to La Casita, he practically talked Ruben into going over there, is what it sounded like. And yet, when they were drinking in the parking lot, after they weren't allowed into La Casita and they're supposedly drinking in the parking lot, why would he go back without Ruben? It seems weird that he's so insistent on Ruben going from Dick's, but when they're there and he tries to get back into La Casita, Ruben is no longer with him. What happened with that? Why wouldn't he have Ruben with him if they were still drinking in the parking lot?
I have a couple of questions here. The first one would be, are you folks wanting to name this person or not?
I just don't remember his name. I'd never heard the name before. And
Okay.
I talked to one of my other brother, Mike, and he didn't recognize the name. So we have no idea who he was.
Yeah, I don't know who he is.
His name is Raymond Mora.
It's just really interesting that he's telling the story. They see him with blood on him after Ruben is not with him any longer. And his story doesn't line up with what other eyewitnesses are saying. There's just a lot of, for me, reading the documents, there's a lot of suspicion about this individual who, if he wasn't around Ruben, then I'm wondering why would he insert himself into this situation?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make much sense, because he even mentions that after the second time he tried to get into, like I say, he left and stayed at a friend's house. But I don't remember seeing anything in the police report that they even interviewed a friend to find out if the guy actually stayed there that night and what the condition of his clothing was, or was he physically harmed in any way, or were his hands bloody, or of the things you would think somebody would follow up with.
And that person, I know of the guy that he supposedly went to his house. The guy's name is Dino. I think that's his nickname. And he lives pretty close to, or he lived close to that location, but on the other side of Grand Avenue. And in the police report, there is a picture of him, but there's no mention that they ever interviewed him.
Yeah, but we should probably also mention that, we've always gotten the redacted version of the police report. And I don't even know if it's the complete version of the police report. And I printed out, I think it's 84 pages of it, and it's all preliminary kind of information. So either not much time was put into it, or there is a whole lot of information missing out of what they provided the family.
Which is possible. I know that police, that we have very strict laws here in terms of public record access, but it's really hard to know what they're holding back and what they're providing you. I know I requested records from the Vegas Police Department as well as the state police just to make sure. And I received the same exact file that you got from Vegas. And I didn't receive anything. State police said they didn't have anything, which I find difficult to believe, but because I do think that they would have been involved in this investigation.
Well, I think there was an initial report from the state police, if I remember properly, but there wasn't very much.
Anything else you want to say about that night and what you all know or what you think happened before we go into what happened from the family side whenever Ruben went missing?
I just want to add, they said that they found him at the bottom of the stairs and there's a couple drops of blood on the steps. But, if to me, there is no, I don't know if it's in another police report or what, but I'd like to know if you don't know that location, it's very hard to miss, very easy to miss where down the stairs there. And it doesn't make any sense to me why they went to investigate if there was a different location and he was just put down there.
Yeah, so I think that was something that struck me as well. The fact that it is downtown Vegas and it is in the middle of everything. It's a back alley where they found him, right? Like at the bottom of the stairs and like a back alley. So you'd really have to be looking for something in that alley to discover him. But to your point, it didn't mention that there was a lot of blood.
Yeah.
There was a mattress found there, and who knows if somebody used that to cover it up to hide Ruben. Or it's interesting, that thought that there could have been a location where Ruben was killed and then later hidden, because it does feel like a hidden type spot, even though it's in the middle of downtown.
That's correct. Yes.
To my knowledge, I don't think they've ever identified where the actual crime took place. And as we mentioned earlier, it was cold that night and there was snow on the ground. You would think that if they were drinking at the Allsups, something went sideways and those guys beat him, you'd think it would be easy to identify where the crime took place, which leads me to believe that I think Ruben was indoors at the time he was killed. I think that's why the mattress is at the bottom of the stairs with him. I think they used it to carry his body out. I just don't think it was a crime of opportunity. I think something else a little bit more nefarious is going on.
Yes, I agree. Which leads me to believe that the only people that would know about that, people within the casita, that would be the first place I would look. And the police didn't seem to look at anything inside the casita.
And I would just like to say that there's so many rumors, right?
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, Ruben was not, he wasn't an angry guy. He was always very chill. So it makes me wonder, I've asked his friends this too. I'm like, can you think of anything that would have prompted somebody to do this to him? And everybody says no. There's nothing in who Ruben was, unless he I think he just maybe was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it goes back to those rumors again, like, why didn't he have any clothes on? Was somebody involved who knew that they needed to take his clothes, prevent the police from having additional DNA? Why down those stairs? Did it occur at La Casita and that was like the closest thing? Or if it occurred somewhere else, why would they bring him there? They could have taken him anywhere. Las Vegas is a small place and there's a ton of land around there. They could have taken him and his body would probably have never been found. But
I agree with what Tina's saying too. The only reason why you take people's clothes is to hide stuff. But they found that no mention of any blood from anybody. Ruben's not a fighter, but there has to be something from autopsy. If there was, but there's no mention of anybody else's blood or anything. There's nothing
that we know of.
That we know of, right?
So you're right. The fact that he was found completely nude, it raises even more questions.
And back then, DNA was just starting, so criminals aren't that smart. They really aren't smart. They will, which leads me to believe that there's more things going on with this than just that person that he may have left with from Dick's.
And just the fact that knew enough to take his body and get rid of his clothing leads me to believe that either the crime was committed by someone who has a background with that kind of criminal activity, or a police officer who's helping somebody to get rid of evidence, somebody who knows enough about the criminal system to either help you cover things up or to give you enough information that you know what to get rid of to make solving the crime more difficult. So somebody with that kind of background, an input into what happened.
Yeah, it definitely seems like at least somebody was knowledgeable enough to know what to do there. So Ruben goes missing that night and your family finds out. What happens after that? So you start trying to get answers, I'm sure, as a family. But here we are now, it's 2024. What happened between 1997 and 2024? And why do you think that there isn't justice yet for Ruben?
I can just speak for me. At the time, I knew two people in the police. Actually, I knew three people in the police department. One was a sergeant. He's deceased now. That was a family friend. And I think he was about maybe 20 years older than Ruben, I think. And I knew another police officer that was one of the detectives there, Robert Duran. And then knew a police officer that was keeping the scene. And his name was Mac Allingham. And those are people that I grew up with knowing. I put my trust in what they were doing because that's what you do. Every time that we'd ask, there was no updates. It was always the same thing. So, yeah.
What does that feel like to just be waiting for answers and feeling like you must feel ignored?
You know, I think it comes back to the fact that I don't trust anybody in Las Vegas. For me, I hate Las Vegas. I do not trust the people in that town. I don't trust the police in that town. I do not trust. I have the DA. I do not trust. But at the same time, I have a cousin that works in that office. But at the end of the day, there's nobody in my mind that can help or is willing to help.
I think for me, something like this happens, you just automatically put your trust into the police department and you think they're going to try and get to the bottom of things. But it seemed the longer it went on, it seemed to be stonewalling us the whole time. I think I mentioned this to you before, Eric. I had pretty much given up on ever getting any answers until, Tina started this back up again. You just, after you hear nothing for so long, you just kind of, give up hope. So I had pretty much given up hope that we were ever going to find who did this. And I don't understand why. Vegas is such a little town. Somebody knows something, and yet nobody seems to want to come forward. And if this were a simple crime, or at least it involved some guys drinking, would have said something. That's why I think there's more to this than there is. Somebody is keeping people quiet, because nothing happens in Las Vegas without somebody knowing something. And it's just very suspicious that nobody seems to want to whisper a word about it.
Yeah. Small town New Mexico is like that. You can't do anything without everybody knowing. It's just, it doesn't make much sense that this has gone so long without any kind of anybody stepping forward or saying something. So I know we're getting close to the end of this episode. I don't want to miss the opportunity for you to talk a little bit about your advocacy efforts, the things that you all are working on to try to get more attention for Ruben's case, and maybe the things that my listeners can do to help you in your efforts, whether that's signing a petition or joining a Facebook group or any of those other things that you may want to talk about.
We have a petition that we're hoping people will sign to bring more attention to Ruben's case and hopefully put a little bit of pressure on the DA to reinvestigate. And then we also have a GoFundMe for a reward for somebody, if anybody brings up something that would lead to an arrest in Ruben's case. We recently had a journalist from the Santa Fe New Mexican write an article for us, which was really helpful. And I put an ad in the Optic as well. Probably will do that again a little bit later on this year just to try to keep some of that in view. And it is, I think, bringing some attention to it. Ruben's friend who found him contacted me a couple weeks ago and said there's a friend of his that he knows who might have some information, although I haven't gotten that information yet. Calls to the DA and emails to the DA certainly don't hurt, just to bring more attention to it as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece that people who aren't in this kind of fight for their families don't really understand. And I think it's something that is important to highlight here is these elected officials like a DA, an attorney general, are unwilling to act for various reasons in cases. Oftentimes it's because they think that they can't win, but there are also times where in New Mexico, I've seen it happen a lot where they just refuse to prosecute for one reason or the other. And oftentimes the only way that families can get them to pay attention and do the right thing is by putting pressure on them, making them understand that everybody's watching, because it is only like making it politically unpopular to ignore you. That's sometimes the only time real action in some of these cases. I applaud you, Tina. I know what you're going through is not easy. You and the whole family, honestly, not having answers for this many years, it must be incredibly frustrating and difficult. And I'm sure it's heartbreaking. So whatever my listeners can do to help, I really hope that you listeners will take the time, sign the petition. That doesn't cost anything, doesn't take very long. If you do have some money that you'd like to give to help for the reward fund, then definitely give to the GoFundMe. And then again, if you have any extra time to email or call the DA in Las Vegas, we'll put the contact information in the show notes below so that it'll make it easier for you. All of the links will be in the show notes as well. And is there anything else that you folks want to say about Ruben or about your fight for justice or anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I'd just like to bring up the fact that it has been over 25 years and there have been advances in DNA technologies. And I'm not exactly sure what has survived as far as evidence from Ruben's murder. But if they still have the mattress, if they have any other evidence that can be retested. DNA technology's gotten so much better. There might be something that they wouldn't have been able to test for 25 years ago. I think it's worth a shot to at least make sure that what was available has been properly tested.
Absolutely agree with you. I think that definitely needs to be looked at, and it may take some significant pressure to make that happen, because I do know that it is expensive, but it is definitely important that all of the evidence be considered in this case. John or Tina, any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, I think Junior said it all for me.
Same for me. And that's really the purpose of what I've been trying to accomplish is I know that they have some, or they did have some evidence. I had his fingernail clippings. They did take things from his body. They indicated that they had the mattress in the police report, and there was a quarter, and there was a blue shirt. Absent somebody coming forward with tip as to who might have committed this, it really, then the goal would be for the DA to reinvestigate and, if possible, send that information for testing.
Absolutely agree with you. I think those are the only two courses of action, right? Either new tips come in or the evidence is tested and they get new information that way. But sitting on it for 2 decades hasn't led to anything happening. So definitely, I think more pressure is the answer. And I'm so honored to have met you all. And I know it's not a fun place to be fighting for justice, but I know that you are doing things the way that you need to move it forward. And I'm so incredibly honored to have met you all. And I stand with you from True Consequences and from the Murder in My Family. We stand with you, and whatever we can do to help spread the word and get more information out there, we're happy to do that for you. Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder in My Family, and I hope that you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.